Shalom. Greetings, everyone. I am Keats Ross. This is the Pragmagick podcast, now a video cast. I'm here with my dear friend, Sir Bran the Blessed. How are you?
Hey, Keatsy, how you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for, doing this. I know since the generation of this podcast, I've tried to get you on numerous times, and it just, for whatever reason, just never added up. So,
Well, my busy plane hopping schedule has made it difficult.
oh yeah, I know you
No, not
jet
really.
setter.
I wish. I need to date a flight attendant is what I need to do. Uh, but anyway,
Yeah, so, one of the main things I reached out to you, I always reach out to you. You've been somewhat of a teacher and a mentor for me, especially in areas of which, I'm just not versed. A lot of, queer magic, ancestral magic, um, and you've just been an invaluable resource for me. I thought, maybe
thanks.
to get started, we could talk a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, where do you want to start? I mean,
Let's go with
go
the
ahead.
ancestral stuff because I know you're like multi-generational through different practices.
It's true. I grew up practicing magic. I've been uh always been magical, and it's definitely hardcore in my family. I am Creole and also Mexican and Irish. So I grew up practicing curanderismo, voodoo, hoodoo, and even Irish cunning craft. And I even, just like any teenager, read plenty of Wicca books. Read just read anything I could get my hands on too, and then had lots of hands-on training with my family itself. So that was really really helpful, and I learned a lot just from observing and seeing. I think some of the best ways you can learn. Books are great, but in order to not be an armchair magician, as the saying goes, I think
Right.
the most important thing is to realize that magic is an active um, participation ritual. And so, oftentimes, the best way to learn, in my opinion, is to get out there and learn from someone else,
Yeah.
IRL.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk a little bit about your earliest experiences within the different currents that you had as a kid?
I mean, it's so I always thought it was a huge pain in the ass when I was younger, because I was like, I want to go play.
Right.
And I'm being taught herbs and I'm being taught tarot. Yeah, I remember my grandpa teaching me tarot and checkers at the same time. Like I remember that he was teaching me checkers, and I thought I was really good at checkers. By the way, for years I thought I was really good because he would just always let me win, kind of, and I really believed I was winning, which actually I found out later is something you're supposed to do with children a lot because it actually builds their confidence. But occasionally he'd whoop me, but I was like, he'd be like, "How did you? I didn't see that coming." But in addition, he'd like teach me tarot, like it'd be like a game, and then it'd be like, okay, now these three cards, like so. I found it a huge pain in my ass mostly, but it was something that just was part of my life and so intrinsic to what I did as a kid.
Right, but it seems also too, I'm sure, like an insular thing because you obviously, I mean, not obviously, I don't know, but you didn't have a lot of people your age kind of experimenting with the same, right?
No, but I was used to being a rather unusual child. I mean, I was prettier than all the other children, so there's that. But so I obviously couldn't just play with them. No, it wasn't so much that. I was black in a place and Mexican in a place that there were no other children like me. I was not only the only brown person um or brown child where I was at. I was the only brown person where I was at, literally. And so I spent a ton of time at my grandparents, and I don't think I felt I needed the other children. Also, here's the other thing. I have like, I think it's something like 39 first cousins or 37. So I was not alone, not by a long shot.
Right.
Like, and I've got a brother and a sister, and so I was not isolated. I had friends. I just, and my cousins all lived where my grandparents lived. So anytime I would go down there, I would have plenty of people to play with.
Right.
And so I didn't need other children outside of my family or outside my coven. Like, for what?
Yeah, amen. I mean, yeah, I didn't have the ancestral currents, that you did, but it was always an insular practice for me to begin with, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What
I
started though, like on your, so where did like say, the Barnes and Noble Wicca come in, and that
that just
current we all fall into, I think, at an early age.
We all do. I mean, I must have been about 11 or 12, and I wanted to know about magic that was different than my family's. And I found out it's not that different, but it totally is. Um, and I was like, oh, so much of this is familiar. And I realized, oh, part of the reason it's familiar is because, well, Wicca is, I don't want to say watered down, but extracted from Hermeticism, and there was an aspect of Hermeticism I was learning with family, so it was not it was not foreign, but it was to me like a lot of the threefold law I had never really like. We work by the law
Subscribe
of
to.
balances.
Yeah.
Well, no, I didn't know what it was. I
Oh,
learned it
okay.
from a book, and I remember asking about it, and my grandmother calling it white people nonsense. My black grandmother calling it white people nonsense. So,
That's fair.
and I didn't understand then what she meant by that. I understand a little bit more now, obviously,
Right.
but at that time I was like, I don't, okay, as kids do. I just kind of like wandered off, like,
Yeah.
and did my thing. Like, I was like, okay.
When did the communal aspect come in? When did you start practicing with other people, learning from other people?
Since I was I mean, my
I mean,
grandparents
outside of
were
your
the,
family.
oh, geez, probably not till Haxon, you know what I
Right.
mean? Which is our old coven.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really my first attempt at kind of bringing people together, I think. I mean, I'd lived in New York for the past, what was it, 10 years? 8 years, 9 years, something like that. And I'm not good with numbers. And and basically, I was tired of being a solitary. I was really, really tired of it. I wanted to grow in my craft. New York is magical in a lot of ways, but I don't think it's magical as magical as, say, Portland or Sedona or New Orleans or Savannah, or south of France or south of England or Ireland. It's not magical like those places. I think once it might have been, but I couldn't find it there. And I had a hard time locating the botanicas, and I had hard time locating a lot of the things I needed. And also, I was performing in musicals. I was modeling full time. I was styling as a freelance stylist, and I think I said modeling already, but I was just like doing all these different jobs
Mm-hmm.
to the point where, to be honest, I had no spare time to really devote to my practice except for on a personal level, because I had to be, in order to do group stuff, it's a group circle or etc. You really have to plan, and
Yeah.
and you really have to carve out that time. And at that time, I was very focused on my studies as a performer and really getting out there as a performer, really doing the entertainment industry. And I did it hard. I was so devoted. And I think that that was really great. But it was the time period I was in at that time. And, when I came home here to Portland, Oregon, I really had to reassess what was important to me. And, I started reading cards and I monetized reading cards, doing what my grandparents did. And it's just like I started really being a business person in that way. And that was the best thing that had ever happened to me, because when I came back here, I had started waiting tables and learning to bartend and stuff like that. I had never had a non-performing, non-modeling job. I had never
Right.
had it.
I
And
think that's
so
when I met you. It was around that time. Yeah.
it was around that time that we met. And then, from there, I did start reading cards, and that has been the best thing for me. So healing for me to go back to those fundamentals. And of course, after Haxton disbanded, I founded a house called Zephyr House.
Right.
And Zephyr House has built on the bones of Haxton, and I think what we were trying to do, but we didn't really have the language to do.
Right. You know, it's funny. It's like almost what I was attempting with more in the artistic sphere with those early We the Hollowed salons that, you'd
Yeah,
come to. But
yeah,
with more of the education of, say, what Zephyr House or Haxon used to do. And it's
yeah.
amazing to see the generation of Zephyr House from those initial gatherings, those initial rituals to what it is now.
Yeah, we started out with 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
I think like 6 to 10 people. And now we have something, I want to say we have like 100, from like 120 people. So that we've become a small church. We're working on our church status right now. Right now, we are a nonprofit organization, and we cover a lot of ground. I mean, we have a seasonal ritual, so one for fall, one for winter, one for spring, one for summer. Um, and then we have a monthly study group, so
Right.
called the occult study group, which is something that we definitely did in Haxon.
Mm-hmm.
That was most of our focus, was studying in Haxon. And then we also have the magical mixer, which is once a month, and it's just casters. You'll hear me use the term casters because not everyone considers themselves a witch. Some
Right.
people are sorcerers, some people are conjurers, some people are, etc. Casters is just a good blanket term. um but basically, it's just for casters and magical community to get together on those magical mixers and just eat and drink and be in each other's company. And then of course we have an entire series of classes that we teach. If we do not have someone who is qualified to teach something, I find someone who's a specialist and I bring them in, whether it is a Santero priest, whether it is a Buddhist monk, whether it is a mambo from Voodoo, whether it is a wort cunner from Cutting Craft of Ireland. Like, we bring in all kinds of instructors, and it's really, really cool
Yeah, I've always
to just kind of
appreciated that.
grow
It's
like that.
been incredibly inclusive considering all the different currents that people bring. It's one of
Yeah.
the few things that I thought, was so important with We the Hallowed and Haxon and Zephyr House was the ability to bring in people of way different kind of backgrounds in spiritual
Mm-hmm.
practice and magical practice, and then, throw them in a mixer and people,
Yeah.
learning. Have you found a common thoroughfare, like a thread between everyone? Is it just like a
People are
spiritual
human.
purposeness?
People are human, and they want to
Yeah.
connect to others, and they want to love and be loved, and they want friendship, and they want guidance. um the way we're set up in Zephyr House is I am queen of Zephyr House, meaning I call the shots. I am the face of the company, if you will. And then my lovely and wonderful eldership is made up of 2 others. One is a person of color named Terrence, who is an amazing reader and very knowledgeable. and very sarcastic. And he is elder of ceremonies, and he's got this amazing background in different kinds of magic, from ceremonial to his specialty, which is Mediterranean
Right.
craft. But he is an amazing priest. I am a very good magic worker, but my priestly duties and my mystic duties are something I'm really working on. So I watch Terrence a ton. I learn a ton from watching him work. And then my other elder and my kind of right hand is Rose. And Rose is an amazing ceremonial magician, and also is a Buddhist, I believe. Nepalese Buddhism is what he also practices, I believe.
Right.
And he is the elder of internals. So we have the elder ceremonials, we have the royal elder, which is me, and then we have elder of internals. And Rose basically handles the back end of stuff. Rose handles the stuff that I'm like, I can't.
Yeah. Well, and also too, the background of Rose is they're like an astrological mage.
Yeah,
And so
they're an
it's cool that
astrological. Yeah,
everyone's got a like a tent pole to them about what their practice and experience with and their magical understandings, which is
they
like you rarely
do.
see. I compared it to you once as like Power Rangers.
It kind of is a little. Do I get to be Kimberly? I
Yeah.
want I want the one that flies.
We were talking about that
Um,
because there was a time when I was considering, you know, before I left Portland to be involved with it and kind of come from a chaos magic background and that sort of
mhm.
thing. And you explained it to me once as like chaos magic Power Ranger, and each one has like a thing. The only problem is like I just don't. I love discussing it, and I love the thing I keep honest with this is I'm a perennial student.
Mhm.
I love to share and I love to work with other people and learn, but it's hard for me to kind of uh, how do I say this, to decide that I'm of the ilk to be teaching. I think.
I understand. Well, I mean, that's kind of people have different commitment levels, and that's what
Right.
I like about the way we're doing Zephyr House is number one, there is no commitment for people who are coming in and out. Like we're an open circle. I will use the term coven, but really we're a circle of solitaries. And what that means is we all have our own practice
Yeah.
and we're learning from each other, but we're not necessarily doing each other's practice. It's more so that we are knowledgeable, respectful people who know about other people and give a damn about other people.
Right.
And also, may I just say, there's some practices that we don't allow white people to learn.
Right.
Like there are certain things that I teach anytime I teach hoodoo. I teach hoodoo only to people of color, specifically aimed at Black and Indigenous people because it's our magic. And so, but the cool thing that I was getting to is we have what's called the support council. There's just a couple members who are deeply involved, who are pretty deeply involved, but don't want the level of elder. And because elder's a lot more commitment.
Sure.
And Rose and Terrence have been with me since the very beginning, and they have just been, steady Eddie the whole time.
Yeah.
But with the support council, we have someone who runs. Oh, because we also have the Zephyr House library where you can you know, take out one occult book at a time because occult books are expensive and they're hard to find. And especially with a lot of the Brown traditions, uh, people don't know where to look, and I do. So I make sure to stock. Yes, there's plenty of books on runes. There's plenty of books on Irish traditions. I've been really seeking out Hawaiian rituals and magic. Because that's harder to find. I found a lot of stuff on limpias for curanderismo, some stuff on brujeria. We've got, you know what I mean? Like, so it's been really great because essentially you've got three elders who are experienced magicians of different backgrounds who are going to pick out different books. And you put that collection together and you're going to find quite the education. So, but we have a support council where someone just focuses on the library, or someone who just helps with parties, or all
Right.
kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
So
totally. I mean, in the initial stages of We the Hallowed, we had that too. It's titles. But what I love about Zephyr House is the kind of, I put this, just the confidence of, you know what, I'm the queen, I'm calling the shots. Because otherwise it can be a mess. It's a total
it's
mess to give
true.
more power to everybody. So,
It's true.
yeah.
I so admire groups like Sacred Lattice,
Yes, I was going to bring them
who
up. Yeah.
Sacred Lattice is an amazing organization. I think it helps a lot of people of color. I think it helps a lot of people of color heal from colonialism. It certainly helped me when I was healing. But and also, I would describe them as a circle. They would describe themselves as a school. There are a bunch of other circles and schools in Portland, Blue Iris Mystery School.
Right.
There is Azoth, the Azoth coven, Cascadia Freeholds, which is the Nordic kids, and there's a bunch others. There's a bunch of others, but
Sounds like a
I think
post-apocalyptic movie of different gangs of mystics, running
it
around.
kind of does. Or like West Side, da 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 da
Yeah,
da.
exactly.
Um, but basically, Sacred Lattice is great. I have no idea how they get things done. They do, but they have this like steering committee, and they do everything by committee. They also have a different pace than Zephyr House. They do things as it feels natural to them, and I think that's really important, and I really admire that about them.
Hmm.
But Zephyr House, we keep a New York pace.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're about practical magic, getting it into the community, pushing forward. So what I love about Portland and the magical community here is I love that we can have a group like Sacred Lattice that does their healing work at their own pace and doesn't submit to the pace of colonialism. And then there's also a group like Zephyr House, which is very, very aggressive about like, okay, we want to get these things done this year.
Right.
And I'm a member of Sacred Lattice and I'm a member of Zephyr House, and you can do both, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, and I had Cecily on, on the podcast back when we were doing the live podcast, and I
Yeah,
cherish that conversation. It's one of my favorite interviews with
she's so
her.
knowledgeable.
Yeah,
She's
she's
so
a lot of fun.
knowledgeable.
I wanted to, there's a lecture you did back in the early days of Zephyr House about ancestral
Yeah.
magic.
Well,
And
I
one of
did it
my
specifically on Hoodoo. Yeah.
on Hoodoo, yeah. But one of my favorite questions was, there was a person there of Caucasian descent that asks like, what if we can't do ancestral magic because we don't agree with our ancestors? And that always that hit me kind of hard during that.
Well, let me be clear about something. I still have very mixed feelings about white people practicing Hoodoo.
Sure.
Um, Let me just say it off that. And I've really thought about it. And I'm not saying that it's always wrong. I can't make that assessment. What I can say is this: the power source, there are 4 power sources in magic. We've talked about this. There's the earth, there's you yourself, right? Because you yourself are connected to everything around you. You're a finite battery, but you're a battery. And then there's the earth and everything in terms of like, all that, anything natural. And then basically there is divine energy, which is the ancestors or God or gods or etc. You're pulling from a divine or infernal source, because there's plenty of people who use that as well, celestial magic, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have blood magic, which is something that you should not be doing unless you're initiated as a priest of certain traditions.
Sure.
Because otherwise it's like dirty money, like, but where was I going with that? Sorry, Aquarius. Hold on, I'll come back. I was going boop, boop, boop. Oh, yes. So what I was saying is, I have mixed feelings about white people practicing magic. So because our power source or not magic, but ancestral magic in terms of Hoodoo. Because with Hoodoo, your power source is the ancestors. So these people for the past, 400 years. Or maybe not for 400 years, but 270 or something like that years, maybe even 300. I don't know exactly off the top of my head. I'm bad at math. But these people worked from dawn to dusk for white people their entire lives. And then were persecuted by them every day, all day, for their entire lives, and served them food, and did their hair, and sewed their clothes, and washed their floors. And then when they died, they went into the ancestral well, right? Which is a spell that was done at the start of colonialism, right? So that they would stick around. And there was something probably even predating that. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure there was. But so you expect, as a white person, if say I was a white person coming to Hoodoo, I would be uncomfortable with the idea that, okay, so these people served my ancestors from dawn to motherfucking dusk. And now that it's their afterlife, I want them to serve me. Yeah. I think that's it's so disrespectful and privileged. It actually, it makes me angry.
Well, let's talk about this, because when I started working with Santa Muerte, I came to you because, she spoke to me throughout my life. I grew up in the barrios of the Southwest, and I'm not of Hispanic descent. But there was something that sung to me, and I came to you about this kind of conundrum, because you want to give reverence, and you want to give homage to the things that sing to you, but you also don't want to overstep your bounds in a way.
It's so it's so individual. What I was speaking of was specifically in reference to Hoodoo. I feel differently about Voodoo and Santeria. I feel like with Voodoo and Santeria, the Loa or the Orisha call who they call, and a lot of times that is white folks, a lot of times that is Hispanic folks,
and
a lot of times Catholic, that is black.
Imagery and saints. And,
that's a safety thing. That's a leftover from that synchronicity. But it's different with Hoodoo. Like with Hoodoo, make no mistake, it's a form of, I wouldn't say sorcery because it's different than sorcery, but there's no one guarding the gate, which is cool. I love that. However, and also with Voodoo and Santeria, the Orisha or the Loa guard the gates. And so I don't get involved in none of that affair. And I'm not one to second guess or question them. And on that, and cool, I don't really need to, you know what I mean? And not that I want to gatekeep even with Hoodoo, but as I said, I just have really strong mixed feelings about someone practicing that way. As for Santísima Muerta, she's the one who decides who and she's got quite the reputation. So she doesn't want you, she won't have you. And so I just, it's a little different.
I've been outspoken about it. I've touched on it, but it's something. Through all of my magical practice, reverence is one of the main things.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two key components: cultural and religious literacy. And the second component is reverence. And we talk about it in Zephyr House because there are white people who feel drawn to this or that or the other. It's not so much about race, it's about power dynamics and understanding power dynamics. So with Santísima Muerta, she can guard her own motherfucking gate. So she don't need me. So if she's calling to you, for me, as far as I know, it's like, okay, cool. And just make sure that you are culturally and religiously literate, that you are doing it. Here's the other thing. It's my personal view on it. That if you're white and you're practicing voodoo, right? Do it the way you are taught by brown people. Don't try to innovate in the religion. It's not your place.
Do you think that, when it crosses the line is when practitioners monetize it?
You know, I think that is so case by case basis.
Yeah.
I love, oh, hi, Lil. Lily decided to say hi. You can
Oh,
see her. She's, she's, you know,
she was comfy.
she's, she's comfy. She decided to just
Well,
come out from my sleep. And
Hecate,
yeah.
soldier.
Right? Oh, okay. Sorry. Didn't mean to wake you up. Um, Jesus. She just gave me this look like,
Mm-hmm.
but what was I saying?
Oh,
Oh,
just yeah, monetizing it.
monetization.
Yeah.
I have nothing against monetizing magic
Right.
at all. Matter of fact, well, let me be clear. Okay. Brown people have always had to monetize their magic in order to survive. Period. End of story. This idea of, oh, it's wrong to monetize magic is a Wicca thing. It comes from some white supremacy shit where you have ancestral wealth
Right.
and
I
or
mean
some white guilt.
monetize like when it's not of your culture
Oh, I see.
and you monetize.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of authors out there writing on things that aren't theirs, which I wouldn't have such a problem with if you could also find Black authors. But as far as I know, there's Stephanie Rose Bird. There's the woman who wrote Jambalaya, which I'm blanking on her name. There's Tanya. Oh gosh, and I've come across like 3 books on Hoodoo that have a brown author.
Yeah.
Um, uh, everyone else is paler. That does not mean, again, it's not that I think that white people should never practice Hoodoo. It's not that. They may deeply feel called to it. The ancestors may call them forward into it. I I don't know why I'm particularly so much more like, I guess because the power is so strong, and I don't always trust white people to do the right thing. And it's been seen over and over again. There is a very big company that monetizes hoodoo oils and hoodoo books and produces them. And again, I wouldn't have such a problem with it if the white people in question understood that brown people and brown people magic is all about community. And so they're not doing it in brown places. They're not doing it in Compton. They're not
Right.
doing it in Brooklyn. And granted, I live in Portland, Oregon, because that's where I'm from.
Right.
But I live in North Portland, and I make sure to teach hoodoo to brown people. Um, I don't feel like that's what they're doing. I feel like they're doing it for a white audience, for the white gaze. I feel like, from what I've observed, and there could be things I'm not seeing, but I don't feel like they make it accessible financially for brown people. You have to think about the fact that the average brown household makes what, 1/7 of what the average white household does.
Right.
I cannot afford a $450 class on Hoodoo.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that is not cool. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's one thing, however, if it was like $450, however, we have this POC or low income accessible rate. We do things like that in Zephyr House because I saw so much of that even like you can see me just getting emotional about it. It it's just so privileged and blind. And I just saw the other day on Twitter, someone was tweeting about a particular book. And they're like, I love my queer magic. And this book is written by a queer person. I don't know him. I'm sure he's great, whatever, whatever. I don't know his background. But, it was in addition to these other queer authors, which, again, love that there's queer authors making great books. It's not that. But Hoodoo, this book was on Hoodoo, one of the books they were tweeting about. And I'm like, just to be clear, that's black magic, black people magic. Not that it's not inclusive of black queer people, right? Because Hoodoo is definitely very that. But what annoyed me about that was it just felt like everything that white people see, they think they can pick up and just make theirs. And you can't fucking have everything.
Mm.
Like, no, no, I'm sorry. And I don't care if that upsets people. I'm sorry. Like, you don't get everything just because you found it and
Right.
it, you know what I mean? Like, you don't just get to pick it up and, oh, now Hoodoo's queer magic. Well, yes, it's queer inclusive magic. It is queer magic, and there are plenty of queer Hoodoo practitioners, thank the Lord. But at the same time, no, it is Black people magic. And it just, there's an old saying in the Black community: Black people ain't shit. And unfortunately, what that means is we can't have anything. We don't get to keep anything, whether it's hip hop, whether it's rock and roll, whether it's the blues, whether it's country. We created all these things, but we don't actually ever get to keep them. Go look on the iTunes page and go look under blues. All you'll see is white artists now.
I mean, that's hilarious. In the darkest sense.
In the darkest sense. I mean, let me. They'll still have Nina, or not Nina Simone, Billie Holiday on there and all those classic artists, but the new ones that they're signing. I mean, look at hip hop now. You've got so many white artists because white people have grown up with hip hop enough to where they can emulate it and be part of it. I'm not saying there aren't great white hip hop artists, but now they're not signing Black hip hop artists. They're just signing, or predominantly signing, white hip hop artists, which is not the artist's fault. It is the record industry's fault. I wouldn't mind white people sharing in things if I could trust them to actually share.
I mean, I was that white kid in the desert playing Skip James and Mississippi John Hurt, and that sort of thing. But it's always been, and it's the same with magic for me, I guess. I think what I'm trying to figure out here is when the reverence morphs, when it morphs from, being sung to by it, practicing it, and endowing, other people with your process or your journey.
Yeah.
And when it changes into like a form of, expertise or something, because
I
these
have
like
no
books
problem
that
with
are
white
written,
people being
right,
expertise in
and
it.
they're not
Actually,
academic, and if they
yeah,
are, they're telling them how to do it. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's a real thin line, and it's one I'm constantly trying to find in Zephyr House. How much to include who, what. Part of my reticence in actually leading ritual is because I am. It's rare that I will share some brown magic with white people. You're one of the few that I've done that with. And also, I feel like it's different if like white people are helping me with hoodoo. It's like, if I trust you, if I'm trusting you with this, what I'm trusting you with is simple. And I think I said it to you when I taught you something. I said, look, I have no problem with you using this spell on a personal level. Use it to make you safe. Um, I ask that if a brown person wants to know this, you teach it to them for free.
Right. Yeah.
You teach it to them for free. It is their magic. It belongs to them. I also ask that you do not go and make money off of this.
And that's what I was getting to is, that second part I think really hit home for me and made me think about the kind of entire trajectory of people, that are teaching magic. And in a
Yeah,
sense,
and the fact that there aren't I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
no, please. No, go ahead.
Oh, well, there aren't brown authors writing on. Well, there aren't many brown authors writing on this. There's also, I think Lilith Dorsey, but I think she's a voodoo priestess. If I'm recalling off the top of my head, and again, it's not that I don't want people to take part in what calls to them. It's just you've got to realize where your position is on the board, and you have to understand power dynamics in a really complex way. And you have to go ahead and you have to ask yourself, like, how do I affect this power dynamic? How do I take part in this? There's a great book I recommended to you called White Supremacy and Me, by Layla M. I think you say it's Sayad. Saad. Beautiful name. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I make all the white people in Zephyr House do the exercises. I make all of them go through it because look, it's about consciousness. White people in this country are not culturally literate. How do I know they're not culturally literate? Because I, as a brown person,
Okay.
um, had a ton of cultural literacy in terms of my own culture and white culture, because I am also Irish. And, you know, my name is Bran, for Christ's sake, which means raven in Gaelic. Um, but you know, I had to teach myself activism and the difference between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and who James Baldwin was and what Nina Simone stood for. Like, if I had to go learn it and read the work of Frederick Douglass, if I had to go learn it because it's not taught in schools, I can guarantee you it's not being taught properly in white schools. And if I have a hard time navigating a lot of these topics, and if I am having a hard time with all these questions, I know white people are. They just aren't necessarily being as honest with themselves about it. And that's a damn shame. I mean, some are, but some
Yeah.
aren't.
So that's what I was gonna say, and I've moved away from the idea of what I think chaos magic has turned into. It's become, I think, almost like antithetical to what it was trying to do in the beginning, which is more of like anarchic magic, but giving
Yeah,
reverence to the things that you
yeah,
work with and you do, and it's supposed to be
yeah,
individualistic in that sense. But to me, the
yeah,
important part was, yeah, it's just reverence, giving reverence to whatever you're using. I think a lot of modern magicians don't follow the source, don't kind of consider where the history of things and where they're coming from, and are
mhm.
results based or too obsessed with just results.
I hear you. It's I wouldn't say modern magicians. Well, first off, we're in the contemporary age, Keats. You know, there's a difference between modern and contemporary. You know
Sure,
your
sure.
furniture,
Yeah, yeah.
but in addition, I would say modern white magicians struggle with that. I think that, or ones practicing white faiths or magical practices. But to be real with you, there are plenty of voodoo priests who are also santeros, and there are people who balance it just fine. You keep your stuff individually in the lane. My curanderismo is separate than my hoodoo, is
Right.
separate than my cutting craft, is separate. Not that they never mix or blend or there's no like meat at the border.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to make a
They're
border
all
joke.
different pillars that hold up this,
Yes,
structure.
but
Yeah.
you absolutely can. You know, I just those people, those little plates when you were little that had the little pocket dividers for the food, and your green beans and your chicken and your,
Oh yeah.
I think of it like that.
TV
But it's the
dishes.
same meal. But
Yeah.
it's the same meal. Like you absolutely can. I'm not even suggesting that it can't mix a bit. I mean, you know, when you got older and your mashed potatoes get on your green beans,
So
that's
I
good.
love that's a great analogy. So also in a sense, the packaging is the
Yes,
thing. Yeah.
I am going to move because Lilifred wants to go out.
Oh, you stalled.
So, just so
There you are.
sorry, you're getting
All
to see
good.
my room a little bit.
Yay. I'll put you on
Ah,
main here. If you want to
there we
show
go.
us around a little bit.
Sure, sure. Give me a second. Okay. Okay. So you can see these paintings behind me. These are mine. These are mine. Tarot readings. Hold on. Let me go ahead and can I flip this camera or I don't know.
Yeah, I
That's
guess
my
you could.
messy closet. How do I flip
Nice.
this? I don't know how to flip this. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, and my hands over the camera. Okay. Um, so just some things you're gonna see. Oh, I don't. What happened?
Oh, the video
Okay.
left. Still
Oh,
got you though. There you are.
hold on, hold on. Do you have me?
Yep.
Okay. So you're gonna see my kimono wall.
As
Kimono
you do.
wall. And then there's my ancestral altar. Starts all the way over on the wall. You'll see Frida Kahlo, Joan of Arc, Maya Angelou, Auntie Maya. And you can see my actual altar right here.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. These are my grandparents right here. How do I do this? Okay, there we go. You can see them. Above them are my other grandparents. I have one grandparent from Ireland right there, my grandma Betty. And then behind her, you see my abuelo.
Hmm.
Uh, right there, he's from Mexico. And then my black grandparents as well. And then the altar goes all the way around. You have more Frida Kahlo, and you have the starter of the queer rights movement, and you have the black Aphrodite,
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit.
Zilifreda, etc. And then, oh, and then I don't know if you can just, this is my little world. It's, especially right now in quarantine.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
this
that's
is,
why I was excited to
this
see it.
is,
I also, I feel privileged that you showed us the altar because I always have a weird touch and go kind of perspective with other people I talk to about sharing, their personal praxis or sharing their
I've
altar
got
work,
no
their spell work.
I've got no inhibitions about that. If I don't want to do something or don't want to share something, I won't.
Right.
But you know me, I'm pretty open, and I'll be pretty open about where I believe your position is on it. And I've had people push back against that and be like, "No, this," and I'm like, "Cool, like let's talk about that."
Right.
And so, because there's a reason I'm thinking this. It's not just because. So,
Yeah, I
it's
wanted to
interesting.
ask if you thought, revealing too much of spell work to the public, in this day and age of social media, Instagramming, and I've done this, I've shared my altar, plenty
Hmm.
of times, especially when it comes to music, and because it was the kind of the concept of giving thanks to it. So I shared it as the cover, of the last
Hmm.
album. But I always wonder what you have to say about that. Does it lose power by sharing more too loosely?
I don't think so. I think, especially with brown magic, queer magic, etc., it's all about community. So sharing is kind of a quintessential part.
Right.
Um, my magic is my own. I don't really need to worry too much. I know I'm strong. I know I'm powerful. I know I can make shit happen. You know I can make shit happen. And so you know, uh, it depends on the caster in question. Someone could see my altar and try to copy it exactly, which PS, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, oh, great, cool. If
That's
that's
just
what you
weird.
need to do.
Yeah.
It's a little weird, but I mean, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
But the fact is, I would have very little problem with it because what would happen is eventually it would morph into their own thing and they'd find other people that they admire. For me, it's Frida Kahlo and Joan of Arc and my grandparents and stuff. But for someone else, it might be James Baldwin, which actually I think I should get a picture of him. But but the point is, it's going to grow into your own thing. So I
Yeah.
don't have a problem with people, especially copying it first. In Zephyr House, we have a dedicant program. I was telling your partner Mary about it, where people under 25, they ain't got no money. So what we do
Shit, people
is
over 30 ain't got no money too.
oh shit, not me, I'm a queen, but just kidding. But I wish being a queen was enough to actually make me rich. That'd be great. But no, yeah, exactly. They don't have tons of money usually. So we require that they come to everything at Zephyr House, which actually is pretty rigorous, but they get everything for free. And
Right.
if people have tarot decks that they don't like, that they've just held on to, they can donate them. They go straight to the kids, they go straight to the people. I find homes for them. If the kiddos don't want them, I often find sex workers that do, who also practice. Or POC folks who don't have funds, or just poor white folks, whatever. I don't know why I said it like that, but I did. And I was like, that's disrespectful. Um, but basically, like they're just in the bayou. But basically, those materials do not go to waste. So if anyone has any of those materials or slightly damaged or whatever, feel free to donate them because we will find homes for them. But in addition, they have to work like a little community service, the dedicants, but they learn. And a lot of them at first copy me,
Okay.
like not me, but they copy me. They copy Terrence. They copy Rose at first, and eventually they kind of start to hit their own stride. They definitely learn quickly. Jesse is one of our dedicants, and he has learned a lot from me, but he constantly is challenging me and challenging my ideas
That's
and
good.
being like, well, I don't resonate with this, so I'm going to do this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, to this point, kid.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. So, it's a very natural process, and I think your magic is always a manifestation of you
Right.
as a human being. Your magic and my magic blend really well together. We've done magic together many times, but it's super duper different. Both are radical forms of magic, but yours has a very different flavor than mine.
Yeah.
Um, and because we're different people, but it comes from the same source, which is the creator. And we are the Instagram filters that then,
Yeah.
add color.
The TV dinner
So
packaging. Yeah.
we're the TV dinner packaging.
Well, let's talk about your upcoming works with Microcosm, which
Yeah.
so cool that you got to work with Microcosm. They've been such a brilliant source, I think, for any young punk kid out there, especially zine makers
Yes.
and whatsoever. I just actually read Joe Beale's book Beyond Music. It's like
Mhm.
interviews with punk musicians or punks that are doing things to kind of change the world,
Yeah.
sustainability, ethics. Really cool book.
Yeah, I love being involved with them. I mean, I at first was talking to Llewellyn. I was talking to Troy Books, and I was talking to Microcosm.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that Microcosm was local. I like that I
Yep, I
can
used
go
to
down
live
the
like right next door.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that I can go right over there and be like, "Hey, Joe, da 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 da."
Yeah.
I also love that they are so much about uplifting and magnifying minority voices. And by minority, I don't just mean of skin, or sorry, orientation or race. I really couldn't remember the name race. Isn't that so funny? But
It's a good
um,
thing.
but basically, I love that they magnify those voices because in addition it's made me a better person. I've learned a ton about neurodivergent people. um,
Right.
Joe has written on that topic. Turns out we have a ton of neurodivergent witches in Zephyr House, and we're working on a class currently all about neurodivergence and how they access magic versus neurotypical people.
Right.
And it's being written by some of the Zephyr Hexen who are neurodivergent themselves.
Nice.
So I wanted a for us by us approach to that curriculum. I mean, I prefer that with most of our things when I can get it. And I think that's so awesome that Microcosm is talking about things and has been talking about things that other people are really kind of, I feel like, afraid to broach
Yeah.
or etc. And I love that. I also was very suspicious going into the occult game. To be honest, I didn't originally intend to write a book. I just kept looking for this book.
Mm.
I wanted to find a book that talked about intersectionality. I'm more than one race. I am, you know, sometimes I think I felt so alone throughout my life that I wanted to like have someone reach out to me through that book. And then I realized that I was not going to find that book. So I needed to write that book.
Yeah.
And
Perfect reason.
so I found out that, okay, you only have to write 3 chapters of a book to pitch it.
Mm.
So I did. And originally the working title was Mixed Kid Magic. I think it's
I love
changed
that.
to, thank
It's a good
you.
title.
I think I've changed it actually.
It's
I
a
think I'm gonna
survival guide or whatever now, right?
no, it's gonna be the Brown and Queer Intersectional Magical Survival Guide.
Nice. Okay.
Not for sure it's a working title. I haven't gotten that fully approved yet. Blah 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 blah. Lydia is gonna be like, Ron, you can't just say I know. So, disclaimer, disclaimer. But that is so far what I think it will be titled. And I'm, the goal of Mixed Kid Magic, or whatever the fuck I'm calling it, is to take someone from a 101 position to a 102, or is it 102, 201? I always get
201, I
confused.
think. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
right.
To a 201 position where, they really are, where they really do have a strong basis in enough things to where they can actually get her done. I'm going to have a tarot section in the book. I'm going to be covering grounding. Of course, I'm going to be covering cleansing. I'm going to have a section that has queer saints in it. They're queer saints and brown gods, because you hear so much about Caradwyn and about the Morgan and about Breed and about the triple goddess and about Hecate. We know these characters, and they're wonderful characters who I really like. I mean, Aphrodite and me get along real well, but at the same time, you know, there's Azili Freda as well as Aphrodite, and there's Oshun. And a brown kid should know this stuff. And no one, but not enough people are writing about this. And I've done a deep dive, not just into my own traditions, but I've been learning about gods of the East and about Ganesha and about Kalima, and it's so gorgeous and amazing. And I just feel like I want to write all this down so that a brown kid can pick up that book, a brown queer kid or queer kid, like either or both, can pick up that book and be like, I'm centered in this book. Because even people who are writing on it are still not centering brown people and queer people. Like my
Explain
love
that
spell
more. Explain the
section.
centering.
Okay. A great example is my love spell section
Mm-hmm.
is going to be all queer love spells.
Okay.
And then in parentheses, I will write the straight adjustment where, oh, if you're heterosexual, this is this is the adjustment for you. But I really feel it's important to sometimes just center queer people so that they don't have to always do makeshift shit. That's one example. Or my new tarot deck coming
Okay,
out.
yeah, I see what you mean.
My new tarot deck. I was really getting annoyed because I have so many decks that I love, right? But especially at this point when I started illustrating it, I started for the same reason I started the book. I could not find a deck that had more than like 1 or 2 black people in it or brown people. And certainly not one where we were 70%, 80%, 90% of it, unless it was one like the African American tarot, which is actually poorly titled because it's actually all African iconography. African American is different than African, although they're connected. And there were ones like the Ghetto Tarot, which is great and cool. It's from Found Things in, I believe, Haiti, and it's amazing. I love that deck. However, and also, I wanted one where we just looked glamorous, where we looked like the kings and queens that we are. And so I realized I kept looking for it and I couldn't find it. So I started illustrating it. And
Can we
so
see
that's
some of
another
these?
example of that. Yeah, sure. Hold on,
Yeah,
I'll grab it.
you shared them with me, and they're beautiful.
Hold on.
Do,
Hold
do,
on.
do, do.
So I'll send you a bunch of, or not send you, show you a bunch. So here's some of them in color. I'm going to show the color ones first. So here's an image of the world card. There's this beautiful trans woman. I wanted to dedicate it to the brown trans women who fought in Stonewall. And I meant to do a Stonewall kind of look, but it came out 70s. It also was kind of based off the Goddess and American Gods a little bit in that
Yeah,
disco
I
scene.
can see that.
And so that is the world card. Here we have the Empress card. This is definitely a Black Aphrodite. You know, an interpretation of this. But this one, it's so all about August. You know, I wanted that feeling of like wheat and you know, and that the cicadas, you know, and yeah, and I wanted her to seem like she was barefoot under that gown. Then we have, actually, when I haven't premiered yet, this is the Star. I've just been working on it a little bit,
Nice.
and she's running that red carpet like it's a river. I don't know if you've ever been on a red carpet, but
Like
if
it's a
you,
river.
yeah, because if you go upstream on a red carpet, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Like,
All done.
like you can't. So all downstream. Then we have, you know, this is a really personal card. This card talks essentially about my relationship with white people. Not so much white people, but white supremacy and my feelings under it. And I realized I had never drawn myself ever in my life. I never tried to do a self-portrait. And so this one is actually a mixture of me and the god Chongo and Saint Sebastian, who is a queer saint. He was killed by his lover, the emperor, uh, which is kind of cool. And he's the patron saint of queer people. And I thought it was kind of cool. Traditionally, Chongo is actually red, but I wanted to kind of do pink to kind of queer it a little bit. You know, and I think it's kind of daring to, because my pronouns are they, them. I thought it was kind of daring to portray such a masculine, figure as a they, them person.
Yeah. It's
So
beautiful. And that's your hanged man, isn't it?
that's my hanged man. Yes, thank you. And then this one I finished yesterday. This is Oshun as the strength card.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about the strength card is it's all about inner strength. So I wanted to find a new way to show that versus like the lion. Although everyone keeps being like, I miss the lion. I'm like, oh, Jesus. But you can see she has all the
Terrence in
elements
the
here.
chat said, "Where's the lion?"
Fuck you, Terrence. But yeah, so you can see she has all the elements here, and that's really important because it's showing that even though she's soft, she's gentle, she's beautiful, she's calm, she's motherly. I think of this image as a mom juggling all the things all at once. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with a great deal of grace. And I admire women so much because they do have that unique, beautiful ability. And so I wanted to show that in that. And then here is, thank you. And then lastly, we have Ganesh as the Aerophant. And I made him deeply melanated intentionally. So, and there's going to be more deeply melanated cards. A lot of the ones I've done so far are a little light, just because they happen to be the ones that were lighter. But I'm working on some
wheelchair.
Yes, oh yeah, that's a good point. I forget, but yeah, he's differently abled. There's several differently abled gods in throughout the whole deck. So, Artemis is left-handed and in the deck, and then and she's the moon, and then also we have Isis as the high priestess, and she has an amputated arm. There's several different ways that I've portrayed different ability, and I'm gonna probably have another wheelchair or two in there too, because I think it should be more than one. And the trick has been how to portray it respectfully.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's the person's first terminology, you know.
Yeah. Well, and how I also realized, like, I was like, how do I portray someone who's deaf? How do I portray someone who's blind in visual art? Like, that's really, really hard.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to, represent mental illness artistically.
You
After
know,
all these years, you know.
there's this artist called the Brooklyn Bruja on Instagram. I actually just commissioned a piece from them, and I believe their pronouns are they, them. And pretty much, they do a really good job in their art of portraying that. So I would take a look. I would take a look there.
Yeah, I would.
Because I actually
Maybe we
saw a
can put
piece
it
on
in the.
dysphoria that
Oh
they
yeah.
that they just did, and I was like, oh yeah, that seems like it is what it would feel like. I assume that's, but it really, I found it, I don't, yeah, it was just like, whoa, it really caught me. So
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to quickly. I'm just now looking at the chat mainly, so I wanted to extend a welcome to anyone that has questions for Bran. Put it in the chat. We'll try to address them. In other words, while maybe those are generating, we could talk about what Zephyr House has planned now that we're in quarantine.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you asked. Nothing. No,
Nothing.
I'm just kidding. Um, well, first off, we have this really exciting class by this caster named Tula. Tula is the bee's knees. I really love her entire vibe. She and I were planning a class before. So what season are we in? Are we in Aries season still, I believe? Or
Yes.
Yes. So it's Aries season. She was like, okay, I could teach this class about Aries, literally during Aries season. And then, during Pisces season, I'll do Pisces. During Aquarius, I'll do Aquarius. And so I was like, that's a really cool idea. Another facet of Zephyr House is that we partner with a lot of the local shops. We partner with Psychic Sister, we partner with Woo, we partner with Clary Sage, we partner with oh gosh, Dance Macabre,
Right.
which is one of my favorite locations. We partner just all over the city. Flutter, I mean, how can I? Flutter, Sea Grape. The only two that we don't partner with are the two that are deeply problematic, which is the Raven's Wing and Queen Mab, who
Right.
both have a history um, of of abusing brown people specifically, despite what they claim in their, you know, both their literature and etc. So,
Yeah,
but aside
we
from them,
we
we
have a
partner with
long and
everyone.
storied relationship with figuring
Yeah.
those things out with those two.
Yes, we do. They wow,
Yeah.
just wow.
Well,
So
Philip
much
Blair
whiteness and
wanted to
colonialism.
ask what Zephyr means.
That's a great question. So Philip, Zephyr means, well, actually not means, it is a god actually. They are a Greek god. They fought Apollo for a beautiful boy, and so they were a queer god, which is what I loved. And out of Zephyrus, Zephyr House was born because it's spelled
Right.
Haus. So
Awesome.
but yeah.
Well, you got Microcosm coming up. Do you know, is there like a release date you guys are toying around with, or is this still?
For my book, it's going to be something like 2 years, which
Okay, cool.
is a second. The cards, I hope we can come out before. There are zines planned,
Mm-hmm.
which is really exciting. I'm hoping that there'll be something called like Confessions of a Conjure Queen or something like that. Like they're taking my personal grimoires and they are publishing them as zines, which is really cool, or at least sections of it or something like that. So I'm really, really excited to share that with everyone.
Well, let's
That's going
talk
to be cool.
quickly about, with everything that's going on in the world. You've been active as a tarot reader, or tarot, as you would call
Whichever.
it.
Both are
and
right.
and I wanted to, extend kind of the invitation for people to seek you out, and maybe if you could talk a little bit about what
Yeah.
those
I mean,
readings are like.
totally. I mean, it's interesting with my business, right? Because with my business, what I did is I found other businesses that I loved, that were local, and I kind of would go there once a week and I would read. This is Woo, Dance Macabre, Cargo, and Flutter. And people could come see me during office hours. That was pretty much how I set it up, and I had a square and whatever. I just kind of really made it a very IRL thing in real life. I did the same thing with Zephyr House, which is awesome. It builds community really fast. It makes people feel seen and heard, and I love all those aspects. However, it is a disadvantage in our current situation. So I am having an opportunity where I get to build the infrastructure of my company on the back end, meaning I'm becoming a lot more social media conscious. I'm learning a ton. I am now doing FaceTime tarot readings with people. And not only that, I'm running a sale on it to make it more accessible, because I know a lot of money is a concern for people right now. So I am having a sale, and I sent you the little meme for that, but it is a sliding scale of 60 to 100 for the hour, which is crazy. Like, I've never run anything like that. It's a very reasonable reading. And then for I have a shorter version of readings that I will do for oppressed peoples, that queer, POC, deeply low income. I have $20 readings as well. And on all my readings, I do ask that people tip if they're capable of doing it. If not, that's totally cool. But the cool thing is that also it allows me to give back to the community when people do book a reading with me, because let's be real, a lot of my money goes into Zephyr House. A lot of my money goes back into supporting. So you get to support a Black, queer, Latinx business person, and so that's also an aspect of reading with me. But I do two kinds of cards. I do tarot, and then I do what I call ancestor cards. And that's the act of reading with playing card decks that in the tradition that Black people have been doing, because we used to have to obscure our forms of divination underneath games of chance. Otherwise, we'd be persecuted. So I learned that from my grams, and I do both forms, and I mix them together.
Very cool.
So yeah,
I love that. And it's like cartomancy in a way.
Definitely. I mean, it's all cartomancy.
Right.
It's,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But different
the
forms.
52 card deck.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
So what is that delineation? What do you think that you kind of tether more with when using, say, 52 card deck or tarot? Is it just kind of
well, here's how I think of it. With tarot, I'm using a very old form of divination. They both are, actually, playing cards and tarot. There's several traditions that read with playing cards. There's the Roma tradition. There is the Creole tradition. You'll see it in brujeria a lot. But and they all have different definitions. And there's some European traditions too, like some French, etc. And the Lenormand kind of came out of it. So or I can't remember which was first, chicken, egg, whatever. The point is, this has been a thing for quite some time, but with mine, I actually put my blood on the cards. They are tethered to the ancestors when it comes to the playing card decks. So I am doing hoodoo. I am doing old school hoodoo, and the answers are coming from the ancestors. They have a very different voice. They're very direct. They're not as complex as the tarot, and it's not unusual for me to kind of get some messages, and it's not unusual for me to. What was that?
Brutal too, like no fucks given. Yeah,
no fucks given. Yeah, I mean, with love, but I always say they sound like a Black grandma who just doesn't have all the time, because that's who's talking is my ancestors. And so a lot of times they're like, girl, you should have left that man. Versus the tarot, with the tarot, I'm using only the majors when I do it. And I know how to use a full deck, but I don't prefer to. And so I'm getting themes from it. So I'm getting a lot of what's happening underneath the surface of that. So one of the cards, meaning the ancestor cards, are very grounded, and then you have and very earthy, and then you have the tarot, which is a little bit elevated, a little bit more high-minded, and that's pulling from earth magic, and it's a
Right.
very different. It's the two blend beautifully, but at the same time, it's a different kind of jam.
It's got a long. They both have long and storied currents, but I think there's something academically limiting sometimes to tarot.
I guess
Yeah.
it's so funny. My favorite thing to do with tarot, and I tell people to do this: read 3 or 4 different books on tarot.
Hmm.
Write down the notes of what each person says. You're going to get 4 different definitions, and some of them are going to be binary. Some of them are not going to be binary. And then what you need to do is you need to find the similarities between the two, or between the 4, and then from there your intuition takes off. Like
Right.
it's an intense study. Right now I'm studying Holistic Tarot by Benabel Wen. I don't love her definitions of a lot of the tarot, but I really like Benabel's thorough approach and a lot of other things that she has to say. And and I think even when I don't love a definition, it's okay, because some of them have become clearer over time, and I'm like, oh, that's what she meant.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Right.
So it's not like, when you're a tarot reader, you don't, just because you've been reading since you were 5, that doesn't mean that you stop learning, that you stop elevating yourself. It means you're constantly doing that. And just like hopefully a doctor seeking further skills, I think
Sure.
they have to brush up on their skills or something like
Perennial
that.
students. Yeah.
Yeah, perennial students.
There's something you said in the beginning that I use too much of it, and you told me once, like, no.
No, no.
Very simply. Yeah. But
Yeah,
you had a
it's
good explanation for it, and it kind of escapes me now, but it had
yeah.
something to do with, like, where do you think it comes from? Like,
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
look, we all come from source. We all come from
right.
the creator. And so your power comes from the creator itself. In ATRs, African traditional religions, we call the power Ashe. But prana, chi, there's a million words for it. And basically, what you want to, and some of us are born with more than others. That's just the way it is. Some of us are born natural athletes, some of us are not. Some of us are so focused on becoming great athletes that we do despite not having a natural
Mm.
affinity. So there's all kinds of different levels. So if you just think of, okay, I've got this much ashe, I've got this much power. Now what am I trying to do?
Right.
There's times where I am reading. I remember it's not uncommon for me to do 12 hours of reading tarot. That is not uncommon, because sometimes I will go from reading at Flutter to, I don't know, advice booth, bar, and going and literally reading tarot, reading tarot, reading tarot. People are always asking me, how do I do that? Well, there's several tricks. Number one, if you have quartz crystals, they can magnify your power so that think of it like, again, an ant, like a sunbeam in the ant. The quartz crystal is the magnifying glass. So it's taking a little bit of power and magnifying it. So that's one thing. The second thing is endurance, like just building your way up, building the more magic you practice, it's just like any muscle. But if you overdo it, you will burn yourself out. You
Yeah.
can make yourself sick. I've put myself in the hospital before,
Yep. I
from
think
doing
after
too
one of
much.
our workings, I didn't ground well enough, and it was a 9-day flu.
Well, well, I remember you were not used to ancestral power flowing
Right.
through you either. Like I remember, I think it was our first ritual together,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't think of anything of it. I didn't think to say anything to you because I figured, oh, he's got it. I thought it was so rudimentary. I'm
Sure.
sorry,
Yeah. No. No.
but it ended
Absolutely.
up
Yeah.
making
You.
you
I
ill.
could be an airhead, famously. So.
Well,
Yeah.
we all can, and you were not used to channeling my ancestors'
Right.
powers. And so we're doing sigils, working with angels, working with demons. I mean, whichever way it is, the fact of the matter is people are working with spirits because a lot of times you don't want to use your own energy to the point where it starts literally sapping your life energy because it's not separate. It's not a separate reservoir. So just like if they had a dam, they don't want to get below a certain point during a drought. You know what I mean? And not that there is a drought, but kind of think of it like that. You want to use as little of your own energy as possible. You're inevitably going to use some of it, but
Right.
it's especially the bigger the working. And if you're doing it professionally, and which is not the goal, but for me, or at a professional level, shall we say, you may, or professionally, you may have several people coming to you. I have had 5 or 6 spells simultaneously going on, and they will pull from your energy. So you need to make sure that A, you're replenishing, B, you're grounding, C, you're cleansing and warding. You're doing your due diligence. Uh, you know, magical sanitation necessary, necessary
Yeah.
requirement. So there's husbanding the energy that we are given and that we have access to or that we are granted is really what we're studying, because we are innately made of this energy, everything around it, we're innately connected. Husbanding it, learning to be wise with it, learning to be reverent with it, that's actually the real test that we're undergoing as mortals.
Yeah.
So
Well, Bran, you have been such an invaluable friend, teacher, practitioner to me. You've consistently given me preternatural experiences through all of this and learning all of this that are so beneficial to just my entire way of thinking as far as someone that is a perennial student, of all this. So thank you so much, and thank you for chatting with me. Everyone in the chat,
yeah.
please follow Bran. All of the social media links and
Oh,
everything will be in the description. And then, what
yeah.
were you going to say, Bran?
Oh, and I was gonna say, if anyone wants a reading, please, hit me up. And I don't know, check us out at Zephyr House, check out Microcosm Publishing, all those things.
Well,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
This has been beautiful. And once again, there's an infographic and everything linked in the description. Thank you guys for showing up. Charles Williamson, Amanda Pomander, Una, Philip Blair, Joshua, Proto, Rose,
That's
Brew
Rose.
Magic, Terrence. It's just been fascinating. So, I mean, yes, you guys in the chat have been fascinating, but it's been great to have.
I have not been able to see what they've been saying,
That's
so
Well,
I can only imagine what I'm going to hear later.
So the live chat will still be available once the video is over. But like with every episode, I will release an article and the audio version as well. And that will be available wherever pods are casted, whether it be iTunes or wherever. So that'll be out next week.
Cool.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Bran, I love you. Stay safe in Portland.
I'll try.
And take care, y'all. Haunt on.
See y'all later.